January. January is a really, really strange month to me because it used to feel like I was standing at the edge of something that hadn't really materialized and that I couldn't quite grasp yet. Okay, no, it wasn't a very bad feeling, but I honestly felt lost. Okay, like I had been handed a blank page, I'd been handed a blank map and told to fill in my entire life direction. And instead of writing anything on this map or on this blank page, I had just stared at it until February arrived. And then, that spilled into spring and then into summer. And I had always arrived in June, feeling like I had never quite accomplished anything in the first half of the year. So there was always this version of me in January. I had plans, I had all sorts of lists, I had intentions, and I had all the notebooks to actually prove it. But then there was reality, which was the slowness of how everything actually really felt, doused in this very quiet excitement and this sort of like hustle energy that I had. Okay, I had a to-do list, I was so excited to start on, but knew that it would have nothing crossed off in a couple of weeks. It was a strange mix of anticipation and excitement for the future, but an inability to really fully let go of the past, especially of the past year that had just gone by. I used to think that this was a discipline problem, that I had just needed more willpower, more motivation, a better morning routine to actually get everything that I wanted in my life done. And well, there was that as well. But there was definitely more. What I figured out was my life simply had no structure. And without structure, everything, including myself, we were just, simply drifting through life. The shift in my thinking and in my realization didn't actually come from a massive breakthrough. It actually came from a question that I asked myself one morning, sitting with my tea before the day started. I asked myself, what would actually make this life feel stable to me? Not exciting, not optimized, but stable. I then realized that I had been chasing motivation. Okay, that feeling of being fired up and ready and, all ready to go. But what I actually really needed and what my body really needed was something quieter, something underneath motivation, which is architecture, stability, not rules, okay, not a rigid schedule, architecture, which is the underlying shape that holds everything else up. The way a building doesn't really need to be exciting to be livable, it just needs to have sound grounding. So I started very small, not with a complete life overhaul, but with the smallest possible version of structure in every area of my life. And something quite unexpected, but quite surprising and nice actually happened. The hustle energy, the anxieties that I was carrying, the background noise in my head that was humming all along, all night long, causing me to actually lose sleep, all that noise actually got way quieter. So I started thinking about structure in 5 key areas of my life. Not because someone told me to, but just because, these were the places where I felt really, really lost. And the first pillar that I really got into was the physical pillar. My body came first, okay? Sleep, movement, food, what I was eating, when I was eating. Was I drinking enough water? Was I actually getting enough exercise? Was I getting out of the house often enough? Things like that. Nothing dramatic, just restoring the most basic physical rhythm. When your body has no structure, your mind has no ground to stand on. When you have a weak body, you most likely will not have a lot of energy to get through your day. You will not have a lot of energy to get through your tasks. Okay, so your body is the first physical step or first step that you have to actually look at. And that was something that I did. The second pillar is the environmental pillar. Okay, I started looking at the spaces around me, especially when I was home. Okay, clutter isn't just visual noise. Okay, it's really a cognitive load that you carry around without realizing it. So I spent one afternoon just going through one part of the room, okay, and one of the rooms in my home, just one, okay, and the effect was actually pretty disproportionate to the effort. I actually felt so much better just clearing that one small space. So with that in mind, I tried to make decluttering a habit. I haven't been so consistent with it, but I try to clear one part of my home, even if it's a small part, once a week at least. And the effect and the energetic effect, I would say, is so much better. The energy and the air in the house, it just feels so much cleaner. So that's one area to look at as well. The third pillar, which is the financial pillar. Okay, money is a very big thing to me, and perhaps I'll talk about my money stories in other videos, but money without structure is actually anxiety waiting to happen. Okay, I'm not talking about like budgets and like spreadsheets and things like that. I mean simply knowing where things are, like where you're spending your money on, where the money is going to, where the money is actually coming from, and just having a general system about these things. Okay. I do have an expenses sheet, okay, an expenses app that I actually use. It's very, very basic. It's just like the amount of money that I spend on whatever in that day and whatever income that I'm actually getting that day as well. This means, when you track things like that, it's all data points, okay, for yourself. And knowing where your money is actually going and where it's actually coming from, it actually means that you're not discovering like things, like surprising expenses and stuff like that by accident. It was only after doing up my financials properly and making it a point to look at my budget and my expenses every month that I started to notice that I actually wasn't spending as much as I thought I was. Okay, a lot of my money per month was actually going to things that really help my business, that help my family, help myself, and I left a small budget for me to actually take out from and to enjoy, stuff from, to enjoy life from. So like, I will use that pot of money to actually go, buy drinks that I want, to take myself out to a meal and stuff like that. So when you settle your financial pillar, your financial area in your life, it starts to feel a lot calmer, especially if you're someone that has, your own money trauma, or you're someone that actually struggles quite a bit with financials. Now, the social pillar. Okay, this was a bit of a surprising one for me because when I looked at my social commitments, which were quite a few here and there, I actually had to ask myself honestly, which of these social commitments were, events and places that I actually really, really wanted to be at. And when I asked myself that question, I started weeding out very carefully, like some of the social events that I actually really did not want to be at, and did not have the energy to attend. Okay, it could be the nature of the event, the type of people there, or I just wasn't feeling it. So the ones that remained on my calendar actually felt chosen, like intentionally, rather than something that I was attending out of obligation. And that distinction actually matters much more than I expected. And with social commitments, because of how busy life can get, one of the biggest litmus tests that I use for social obligations is, how do I actually really, really feel deep down when I think about going to that event? Do I feel an immense sense of dread? Do I just feel like a little bit lazy? But if I had something structured properly, like if I plan my day out properly, I plan what to wear and what to do over there, and what my intention was and what time to leave, would that be more enjoyable? Things like that. So these were questions that I had to really, really ask myself, because there were a lot of social commitments where I just had it on my calendar, but I really, really was dragging my feet to get there. And when you're dragging your feet to get somewhere or to meet anybody, I think that's a very, very big sign that perhaps that particular thing is not, a place where you actually feel welcome or you actually feel comfortable in. And yes, sometimes when we feel a sense of discomfort, it's the growth and the challenge and the point of growth as well in your life to actually push through that discomfort and get to that place, to wherever you want to be. But sometimes the discomfort is actually pointing to something else, and it's actually pointing to an energy misalignment or mismatch between you and the place that you're going at. Sometimes your gut or your intuition picks up on these things faster than your mind and your conscious awareness does. So something to pay attention to and something to ask yourself when it comes to your social commitments. So the last pillar that I was actually looking at was also the mental pillar, okay, the mental health part of things. So I'm someone who actually overthinks a lot. Okay, if you think of my head as a computer, I have a lot of open tabs inside my head, a lot of unfinished thoughts, deferred decisions, things that I was carrying without resolving, things I kept, it was just, humming in the background. So I started externalizing these thoughts. I started writing things down and making that a habit. Okay, I started making decisions I had been avoiding. Okay, this is to get into the habit of making tiny decisions instead of sitting on them for too long. I started closing loops quickly as well. And I did that a lot in my day job. And the effect was quite I wouldn't say it was immediate, but I started to notice that I could carry things a lot lighter. Like I didn't have a lot of things in my mind, and didn't feel like my mind was like heavy. Like I needed a lot of like I needed a lot of downtime and sleep to actually get things out of my mind, and I wouldn't feel so tired as easily as well. So it's something to actually do, to really, really look at the thoughts that are going through your head and what you are actually carrying mentally, and whether that load is actually contributing to you feeling tired and exhausted and, just kind of like all over the place in life. So, what I didn't quite expect was how much of my anxiety or how much of that messiness that I thought was going on in my life was actually structural. Okay, I had been treating it as a psychological problem. Okay, I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought there was something to process, something that I needed to work through. But a lot of things, all these things that I just talked about, all of these was just the noise of a really unstructured life. Okay, the low hum of things unresolved, the buzzing thoughts, the cluttered spaces, just the basic routines were actually missing for me. So when the structure started coming in, I wouldn't say that the anxiety completely disappeared overnight. There's always going to be a little bit there, but my mind definitely became quieter. Okay, things became more manageable, felt more manageable, and I felt better about myself. It was less like, I felt less moody as well, and I felt like life was actually something that I could really do something about and see positive changes. I started thinking more clearly as well. I made decisions faster. I had more of a capacity for the things that actually mattered to me. Structure didn't really, constrain me in any ways. And I was very worried because there are a lot of people out there talk about, how we have been so caught up in a lot of different containers in different stages and different parts of our lives. Like we go through school, and then there's things that you need to do in school as a student, and then when you come out to the working world, there are things and rules that you have to kind of pay attention to as a working adult, and then there are all these different life decisions that you have to make as an adult, and it just felt very restrictive after a while. But I didn't feel that this sort of basic life structure, like setting up this structure, actually constrained me. It actually gave me some ground to actually stand on, to make sure that I could do the things that I wanted to do. I had the energy to do whatever it is that I wanted to achieve. And it was from this solid ground that I felt that everything else becomes a little bit more possible, and actually way more possible because I had way more energy. Okay, and there's a question that I kind of want to leave with you, which is how much of the noise in your life or the anxiety in your life is actually a structural problem in disguise. It's not so much something that is happening to you, and it's not something that is wrong with you, but it's something that has to do with a basic structure that you are missing out in life. Okay, something to actually think about. Where can you actually structure your life a little bit better? So for me, once the noise, quietened down and everything kind of calmed down, something really unexpected happened. So I started noticing things that I hadn't been able to notice before, because I just didn't have that mental and emotional capacity, because my mind was so filled with things. And there were certain signs and signals that I was also missing out on because of all the background noise. But once that noise actually became, quietened down because of the structures I had, um, I started to kind of like pay attention more to my intuition and pay attention more to what my body was actually feeling. The signals and the small signs that my body was actually either saying yes to something, or the slight contraction I felt, a slight discomfort, and unease I felt when my body actually picks up on something that is going wrong. So structure had cleared enough of that space for me, and it cleared enough of that kind of mental clutter that I had in my mind. And your mind being quieter, you start to then be able to pay attention and align with the frequency of your body, so that all these quieter signs can actually be finally heard by you. Okay, but intuition and how I actually develop that part of myself, I'll be talking about that in the next video, which I kind of used February to kind of develop my intuition, so to speak. And I'll share my experiences with you in the next video. But if this is something that resonated a lot, actually in my newsletter I go a lot deeper into all these things that can actually make your life way better. Okay, so all the different ingredients: setting up a structure, using your intuition, managing your energy, managing the spaces that you are in. I talk a lot about all these things in my newsletter, which I will link down below in the description box. But other than that, I hope this video resonated with you in some way, and I will see you in the next video. Do remember to subscribe as well to get notifications for the next video that will drop. So this is Sonia signing off, and I will see you in the next video.